Sunday, August 28th. Just after midnight, the National Hurricane Center upgrades Katrina to a Category 4. 6 hours later, 160-mile-an-hour winds upgrade Katrina to a Category 5. Roughly 12 hours after Mississippi county leaders issued mandatory evacuation orders, Louisiana Governor Kathleen Blanco joins New Orleans first-term Mayor Ray Nagin to finally announce a mandatory evacuation.
I do not want to create panic.
Now, there's a rush to get out. Evacuation from New Orleans is slow. More than 20% of that state's population lives in and around the city.
We evacuated over 1.3 million people in 36 hours.
Kathleen Blanco explains that evacuating an urban area is a major task.
It was pretty intense. It's not an easy thing to evacuate an enormous population center.
Starting Monday, August 29th of 2005, we found ourselves having to deal with the storm itself, not so much from the devastation, but from the number of people who came here. That number was estimated at well over 250,000 people. In 1 week, we got 250,000 people in. We exceeded our 25-year traffic growth in 1 year. And from there, we just had to now try to make the best situation we possibly could based upon the poor hand we were dealt.
So the leadership of Baton Rouge had to cope with Baton Rouge expanding in population, overnight to hit population projections that were literally 20 and 30 years down the road.
That we can talk about the fact that Baton Rouge had some great community long-term planning efforts, but what Katrina did was it excited those efforts. It was a catalyst to reach maybe a 10-year goal in much less than 10 years, almost literally overnight, in terms of waking up a downtown, vibrant, sustainable business and walkable environment.
We were fortunate enough to have outstanding partners in the DoD in Baton Rouge. We contacted them about a week after the storm and started talking about, if we could office in their place, and we really didn't have to ask for anything because they just laid it at our feet, and that's something that we'll be eternally grateful for.
So we decided immediately to decamp and move to Baton Rouge and set up a interim situation. We did not know whether that interim was 5 months, 6 months, a year, or would New Orleans, like some people were saying, was doomed and was over. So we reset up an entire office, and within 72 hours we were up and running.
The best, I think, thing to come out of the lessons learned from Katrina is how to build sustainable environments.
The key thing people have to remember about Hurricane Katrina, even though they talked about the evacuation, there was not one book written that could tell you everything to do.
Communications were bad, as we all learned. Cell phone towers got totally swamped or had been knocked over during the storm.
Learn about how our businesses can get back up and running, how we can maintain our contacts and relationships and rely upon those so that our economy doesn't completely collapse and fail.
But for a business-centric need, being able to reach out to an active chamber or a downtown development district as a provider of information and a facilitator of accommodations, and just as a safety net to help people get up and running is key.
There was no model in place, and so everyone just sort of created whatever was necessary, and those practices became models. We actually ended up, as a result of that disaster, developed a policy manual so that if this would happen again, we'd know how to rally the troops, how to pull things together, what resources were necessary.
And for every 1 minute you have three major decisions you have to make, either by phone call or something dealing with logistics. And you're hoping and praying that the decision you make is accurate.
We came here after Katrina, decided to stay here, and we have recruited from the Baton Rouge area and are here to stay in terms of a permanent business.
Everyone's relationship has changed since 2005.
That if we do this right, the ability for Baton Rouge and New Orleans to anchor an incredibly powerful economic region.
And now to see traffic in downtown and mamas with their babies and strollers and families coming down, and downtown is the place to be.
And because of the partnership we have downtown and with this community, and now watching revitalization taking part.
I understand as the mayor of New Orleans, how goes Baton Rouge, so goes New Orleans. How goes New Orleans, so goes Baton Rouge.
That Baton Rouge and New Orleans will sign a sister city agreement. It will talk about economic development. It will talk about cultural ties. It will talk about research. It will talk about the arts and every other thing that we have in common, but we never allowed each other to look inside of our souls and our minds to find out what we had in common.
If you look at what has happened in the last couple of years, you must understand that New Orleans and Baton Rouge have now a symbiotic relationship in so many special ways. The city of Baton Rouge was just incredibly generous to the people of New Orleans.
We will forge a partnership that should have been forged decades ago between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and that partnership will be everlasting.